may I just try and take, Ollie is there, anybody else? Thank you, I've got your grey jumper, so I was up before, and then I'll try to go to you, but it could be short questions because Mary and Mark will be leaving in 5 minutes. Ollie? Just
following on from Nora Owen's question, on the UN peacekeepers, in the EU at the moment, when exercises are deploying, 1325 is built into the operational plan and the training aspects of it. Can we not ask DPKO that before troops are deployed, that as part of the inspection would take place on what they have learnt about 1325 and the whole area of GBV? And then I would say to you that it's not sufficient just to return a person to their home country and leave it to that home country. Surely UN, if there is no follow back from the participating nation, then that the sanctions against that nation in that particular mission should be sent home. I know it has happened in one mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. I'm just going to take your question, and I'll try and take the other one if we can make them quick, okay?
Yeah, thanks to all the speakers. I think some really useful points were made about the integral parts of an M&E process, so in terms of time frame, resources, smart indicators. And one of the other things that I thought that really came through was the value of experiences of women and how that needs to feed into any process. And what I was wondering, I suppose, is I think in terms of the evaluation of the NAP, the other side of this is that it needs to evaluate the impact on women on the ground. So a participatory evaluation needs to take place. And I was just wondering if speakers could give thoughts on that and how that could actually happen in practice.
Okay, thank you. If it could be quick, and then I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to stop at this stage. I'll come back if I can, okay?
Thank you, Inez. I'm Sarah McCann from Trogrive. Just a question to Margot. I really liked the way you set out your political agenda, and I thought it was really sharp and succinct. And I think particularly on point one around ending impunity, because it is so challenging. And I think we've known about the rapes in DRC and Darfur for many years, and sometimes you do feel utterly helpless as civil society, or when you see them continue year after year. So I'd just like to ask you for maybe concrete initiatives that I suppose civil society and governments can take to bring forward the issue of ending impunity, and where there are examples of maybe good practice where impunity has been successfully tackled, be it reform of legal structures or legal processes, which we know are often very intimidating to women who have been affected by violence.
Okay, I'm aware. I'm going to deal with my own discourtesy because there was somebody at the very back there who's had their hand up for a long time and I didn't see it. So could you make it short?
Yes, I will indeed. And it's about the 1325 and the absence of Northern Ireland, a post-conflict country, in either the UK, NAP, or indeed we think in the Irish one as well. And we wonder when the women in Northern Ireland will be included in the, excuse me, the provisions of 1325 when we're still going through a very serious post-conflict situation.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Margot if you could deal with the peacekeeper issue and the other issues? Thank you.
I'll try to be very short. I agree with you. I think it's very, very important with the pre-deployment training. And of course, the DPKO has also a kind of mobile training unit because we can only try to offer to contribute to the training. And a lot of it will have to be on exactly these issues. We cannot be sure that the gender training is that thorough in many of the police and troop contributing countries. Most of them, as you know, come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, South Africa, Uganda, and a few others. They are the biggest police and troop contributing countries, and it sometimes leave a little bit more to wish for when it comes to the gender-based training. So we are trying to help and contribute by training modules, and we will of course insist even more on that. And that's why I will also visit these countries to talk to them about it. And there will be an opportunity to discuss also what is being done to the soldiers that are sent back home in order to follow up if they are accused of SEA. And these days they are sent home. If this comes to the knowledge of force commanders or people on the ground in the missions, peacekeeping missions, they will be sent home. That's for sure. But again, I mean, in some countries, prostitution is not a crime; it's allowed, and this is what they where it's sometimes difficult to be effective enough with them. The other question was on how to end impunity. this is in different layers. It's of course extremely important that, well, I will continue to signal that I may have made this a priority, because I think that is one of the strongest signals and messages we can send, that it has to end. If all these perpetrators go unpunished, of course it will continue. It has had absolutely no consequences so far. And this is what I'm telling also the government in the DRC. If you establish a policy of tolerance zero, then it cannot have conséquence zero. Then you cannot have a zero tolerance with zero consequences. But you have to make sure that there is a follow-up. And so a priority also in the Security Council, where they are willing to use all the sanctions and the measures that I mentioned. I think it's important as donor countries, as in bilateral context, to discuss this. How can we contribute so that, for example, security sector reform is carried out? Because we met this police unit in Goma, 39 police in a specialized police unit dealing with sexual violence. But they had one vehicle, they had one motorbike. So they have to ask the perpetrator to sit up behind them to go to the police station. And I think that the donors who are now helping with training, maybe they could buy a vehicle instead. That would be more helpful. So if they maybe coordinated a bit better, this would actually help. So I think in discussing among donor countries as well what they can do, they can probably also contribute a lot to make sure the security sector reform is carried out, because that will help a lot. And of course ICC, the fact that the tribunals and the International Criminal Court these days also deal with it, and cases are referred to the ICC, and that will also send a strong signal.
Okay, thank you very much, Margot. Mary?
Can I just say one last word about how I think that it's fascinating in Ireland that you work in this way always with you try to find joints. It's very Swedish, I would say also, but you try to bring all the partners on board. You have a joint consortium dealing with this question where you invite broadly, and government, you have NGOs, you have also the critical voices. You try to bring all partners together. I think it's so important, and it should serve as an example to many others. I saw it, of course, when discussing the treaty as well. I know you did the same thing with the National Forum. And I think that this way of working is so important. I will take it from here, definitely, as an example.
Making it work can be a bumpy road, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
It takes longer, but
exactly.
It's more effective in the end.
Exactly, Margaret. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take the other two questions briefly. I was really very impressed with the question about valuing the experiences of women on the ground, and also that part of the evaluation has to be the impact on women on the ground. And I think that this is something that we don't take seriously enough at all levels. Because of pressure from various sources, including our Civil Society Advisory Group, the special representatives of the Secretary General in countries of conflict had for the first time open days in consultation with women last June. And then we had the open day in October to bring this together. But this shouldn't be because of a 10th anniversary. Women should always be consulted. But I think you also now challenge the joint consortium. And I just had a quick look through the indicators there. It's hard to look through them very quickly. Number 6 talks about link with civil society organizations, including national NGOs and human rights organizations. But you're actually talking about something deeper, which is linking with women and listening to women. So maybe the joint consortium can think about the fact that there has to be an evaluation by women on the ground that the organizations are dealing with as to the impact on them of the policy and the indicators. This touches another thing which we tried to put forward very strongly at the Civil Society Advisory Group, resources for local women's groups. And that's why I'm hoping that some of the significant money that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was talking about, the 44 million, will go to local groups on the ground, whether in Afghanistan, DRC, and elsewhere, because women can't really come together to be consulted without some seed money, without some resources. And it's pathetic how little money gets to women locally on the ground in situations of conflict. It gets to... That could be an indicator, in fact, in a way.
Actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah. And the second point, very briefly, yes, The issue in relation to women from Northern Ireland, in fact, the joint learning process involved women from Northern Ireland, and a point was made about the fact that there was a listening, and it was women on both parts of the island, plus Liberia and Timor-Leste, and that involvement. I was interested, Charlotte, if I can just speak my mind as I usually do, when you mentioned that there's possibly going to be a study of women in Northern Ireland, and I kind of have a feeling that there may be room for doing that in some sort of collaborative way with the consortium and with the cross-learning process that's already taken place. In other words, it seems strange if there's a sort of British initiative for women on Northern Ireland and a Southern initiative for, it's almost, so somehow I think there needs to be a kind of clarifying and collaborative approach, and that maybe will address the point you're making, that there's still a neglect of some of the issues on the ground that need to be brought out, but it could be done I think it could be very interesting to do it in a more collaborative way.
I think if we take it away from the constitutional problems and the fears of getting caught up with devolution and the problems in the north and all the rest of it, in a sense the consultative process which I chair, the workshops that are underway, there's going to be one in Derry, there's going to be women involved, feeding in from it, and doing that in a way which is not about impinging on the sovereignty issues, but actually about experience being heard in terms of conflict. And I think it would be a very valuable thing, for example, on how we could actually have that process feed into a process which isn't about the UK and Ireland, but it's actually experience of women on this island. I mean, OFM, DFM could be brought in that discussion, and it could be a relaxed, if you like, good process rather than a heavy political issue. Okay? Now, on that basis, both Mary and Margot have to go. May I ask you to thank them?